everybody, welcome to a brand new episode of my Autism Diaries. It's been months since I did the last one. I have an idea for a new one and a few more maybe, but I wanted to just alert you to something. The diagnostic papers that I read in the first Autism Diaries video that I did, they got destroyed by a very mean cup of coffee. So I asked the centre to send me another copy, and I have them here. They somehow put it on back-to-back paper as before it was single-sided, but I think they should have done that in the first place, you know, saving the environment, that sort of thing. I was just perusing it for my own leisure, and there was something at the back that for the last 2 years I've missed. I thought all the bump at the back was just about like a bibliography and references and acronyms of different acts and stuff like that, and places you could visit. There's an appendix at the back and it gives general information on autism, so I just wanted to share that with you today, see if any of it will be helpful. Autism is a lifelong developmental disability that affects how a person communicates with and relates to other people. It also affects how they make sense of the world around them. It is a spectrum condition, which means that while all the people with autism share certain difficulties, their condition will affect them in different ways. People with autism are able to live relatively independent lives, but others may have learning disabilities and need a lifetime of specialist support. People with autism may also experience, and it's underlined here, over or under sensitivity. I've touched on that before. You can either be completely desensitized to something or oversensitive to sounds, touch, taste, smells, lights, or colors. How do people with autism see the world? Subheading. People with autism have said that the world to them is a mass of people, places, and events which they struggle to make sense of and which can cause them considerable anxiety. In particular, understanding and relating to other people and taking part in everyday family and social life may be harder for them. Other people appear to know intuitively how to communicate and interact with other people, and some people with autism may wonder why they are quote unquote different. I had that all my life, always wondering, why am I different? Why do I stand out? I'm not trying to, I just do. Autism is a lifelong developmental disability. It is part of the autism spectrum and is sometimes referred to as an autistic spectrum disorder or an ASD. I don't like the word disorder, not many people do. The word spectrum is used because while all people with autism share three main areas of difficulty, their condition will affect them in very different ways. Some are able to live relatively everyday lives. Others will require a lifetime of specialist support. I know this is repeating, but I'm only just quoting what it says on here. The three main areas of difficulty, which all people with autism share, are sometimes known as the triad of impairments. Now, it's worth just going back to something I've said before, and many people have said before. A lot of people, including those on Twitter, and I've had to really stand up for myself and other people on the spectrum and say, look, it's not a condition that is dished out willy-nilly. It isn't something that you have a few problems and you're diagnosed. You have to meet the diagnostic criteria, which is within these three areas. Difficulty with social communication, difficulty with social interaction, and difficulty with social imagination. So we'll go through all of these. It can be hard to create awareness of autism as people with the condition do not look disabled. I hate it when people say that. Parents of children with autism often say that other people simply think their child is naughty, while adults find that they are misunderstood. All people with autism can benefit from a timely diagnosis and access to appropriate services and support. The three main areas of difficulty, which I've just mentioned before, so just skip over that. Right, social communication. For people with autistic spectrum disorders, body language can appear just as foreign as if people were speaking ancient Greek. People with autism have difficulties with both verbal and nonverbal language. Many have a literal understanding of language and think people always exactly mean what they say. They can find it difficult to use or understand facial expressions or tone of voice, jokes and sarcasm, common phrases and sayings. An example they might say it's cool, which people often say when they're thinking something is good, but strictly speaking means that it's a bit cold. Some people with autism may not speak or have very limited speech. They will usually understand what other people say to them, but prefer to use alternative means of communication themselves, such as sign language or visual symbols. Others will have good language skills, but they may still find it hard to understand the give and take nature of conversations, perhaps repeating what the other person has just said. This is known as echolalia, and that's another subject for another day. Or talking at length about their own interest. Guilty. It helps if other people speak in a clear, consistent way and give people with autism time to process what has been said to them. Okay, the next area of the triad of impairments is difficulty with social interaction. People with autism often have difficulty recognizing or understanding other people's emotions and feelings and expressing their own, which can make it more difficult for them to fit in socially. They may not understand the unwritten social rules which most of us pick up without thinking. They may stand too close to another person, for example, or start an inappropriate subject of conversation. Appear to be insensitive because they have not recognized how someone is feeling. Prefer to spend time alone rather than seeking out the company of other people, or not seek comfort from other people. Appear to behave strangely or inappropriately, as it is not always easy for them to express feelings, emotions, or needs. Difficulties with social interaction can mean that people with autism find it hard to form friendships. Some may want to interact with other people and make friends, but may be unsure how to go about this. Social imagination now. Social imagination allows us to understand and predict other people's behavior, make sense of abstract ideas, and to imagine situations outside our immediate daily routine. Difficulties with social imagination mean that people with autism find it hard to understand and interpret other people's thoughts, feelings, and actions, predict what will happen next or what could happen next, understand the concept of danger, for example, that running onto a busy road poses a threat to them, engage in imaginative play and activities. Children with autism may enjoy some imaginative play but prefer to act out the same scenes every time. Prepare for change and plan for the future. Cope in a new or unfamiliar situation. Difficulties with social imagination should not be confused with lack of imagination. Remember, I'm a writer. Many autistic people are also writers, and many are artists, and they create games and things like that. So it's not to do with imagination per se. This is social imagination. It's a bit different. Many people with autism are very creative and may be, for example, accomplished artists, musicians, or writers. Yeah. All right. Characteristics of autism. Another subheading. The characteristics of autism vary from one person to another, but as well as the three main areas of difficulty, people with autism may have love of routines, sensory sensitivity, special interest, learning disabilities. Okay, love of routines. The world can seem a very unpredictable and confusing place to people with autism, who often prefer to have a fixed daily routine so they know what is going to happen every day. The routine can extend to always wanting to travel the same way to and from school or work, or eat exactly the same food for breakfast. I don't know, I think I might have said on a previous video, every single day for lunch I always had Marmite sandwiches, and my mum used to just go crazy and say, "Eri, please have something, have I don't know, ham, have jam, have this and that." No, Marmite sandwiches. And I still love Marmite sandwiches with a cup of tea. Rules can also be important. It may be difficult for a person with autism to take a different approach to something once they have been taught the right way to do it. People with autism may not be comfortable with the idea of change, but can cope if they are prepared for it in advance. Sensory sensitivity. Okay. People with autism may experience some form of sensory sensitivity. This can occur in one or more of the five senses: sight, sound, smell, touch, and taste. A person's senses are either intensified or undersensitive. For example, a person with autism may find certain background sounds, which other people ignore or block out, unbearably loud or distracting. This can cause anxiety or even physical pain. People who are hyposensitive may not feel pain or extremes of temperatures. Some may rock, spin, or flap their hands to stimulate sensation, or to help with balance or posture, or to deal with stress. People with sensory sensitivity may also find it harder to use their body awareness system. The system tells us where our bodies are, so for those with reduced body awareness, it can be harder to navigate rooms, avoiding obstructions, stand at an appropriate distance from other people, and carry out fine motor tasks such as tying shoelaces. Many people with autism have intense special interests, often from a fairly young age. These can change over time or be lifelong and could be anything from art or music to trains or computers. Some people with autism may eventually be able to work or study in related areas. For others, it will remain a hobby. A special interest can sometimes be unusual. One person with autism loved collecting rubbish, for example. With encouragement, this was channeled into an interest in recycling and the environment. Okay, with learning disabilities, people with autism may have learning disabilities, which can affect all aspects of someone's life, from studying in school to learning how to wash themselves or make a meal. As with autism, many people have different degrees of learning disability, so some will be able to live fairly independently, although they may need a degree of support to achieve this, while others may require lifelong specialist support. However, all people with autism can and do learn and develop with the right sort of support. Other conditions that are sometimes associated with autism include ADHD or learning difficulties such as dyslexia and dyspraxia. Autism is much more common than most people think. There are over 500,000 people in the UK with autism. That's 1 in 100 people. People from all nationalities and cultural, religious and social backgrounds can have autism, although it appears to affect men more than women. It is a lifelong condition. Children with autism grow up to become adults with autism. What causes autism? The exact cause of autism is still being investigated. Not caused by vaccines, get that idea out of your head. However, research suggests that a combination of factors, genetic and environmental, may account for changes in brain development. Autism is not caused by a person's upbringing, their social circumstances, and is not the fault of the individual with the condition. It annoys me when people think that that is the case. Is there a cure? At present, there is no cure for autism. However, there is a range of interventions and methods of enabling learning and development which people may find to be helpful. A diagnosis is the formal identification of autism. Having a diagnosis is helpful for two reasons. It helps people with autism and their families to understand why they may experience certain difficulties and what they can do about them. Some professionals may refer to autism by a different name, such as autism or autistic spectrum disorder, classic autism or CANA autism, pervasive developmental disorder or high-functioning autism. Signs of high-functioning autism and Asperger syndrome. Gilberg and Ehlers, I can't pronounce that, identify four main areas where controversy over the difference in diagnosis still exists. Okay, level of cognitive functioning. Now, I have been diagnosed with autism, not Asperger's, but I've been told that I'm quite high functioning. So some of these will be with regard to those with Asperger syndrome. So if you have Asperger syndrome, I really hope that you find this helpful. Okay, a view that Asperger syndrome is autism without additional learning disability is helpful from a diagnostic point of view and is fairly easy to make a distinction in these circumstances. However, Asperger himself said that there may be unusual circumstances where a person could present the symptoms of Asperger syndrome with additional learning disability. It is widely recognized that high-functioning autism cannot occur in someone with an IQ below 60 to 70. Motor skills. In recent years, the view that Asperger syndrome can only occur when there are additional difficulties with motor skills has become more prominent. Certainly, Asperger himself was well aware of the prevalence of motor skill problems in the group of people he tried to describe. It seems likely that most children with Asperger syndrome may experience poor coordination and difficulties with fine motor skills. However, many children with higher functioning autism may also have difficulties in these areas. Right, language development. This is an area that probably causes the great controversy. Both, I think these are like government acts as ICD-10 and DSM-IV, which is 4, I think, in numericals, state that for a diagnosis of Asperger syndrome, spoken language development must be normal. Children with high-functioning autism may have had significant language delay. However, Asperger's original descriptions of the condition stated that speech and language peculiarities are a key feature of Asperger syndrome. Often diagnoses of Asperger syndrome are made when a child is quite old, and they or their parents may have difficulty remembering the details of their language development. Age of onset. A diagnosis of high-functioning autism and one of Asperger syndrome can be made in the same individual at different stages of development. Occasionally has been diagnosed with high-functioning autism in early childhood, and this diagnosis has been changed to Asperger syndrome when they started school. Some diagnosticians are clearly of the view that Asperger syndrome cannot be diagnosed before a child starts school. However, this is largely because areas such as social skills deficits may not become apparent until a child spends a lot of time in social settings. Okay, to summarize, both people with high-functioning autism and Asperger syndrome are affected by the triad of impairments common to all people with autism. Both groups are likely to be of average or above average intelligence. The debate as to whether we need two diagnostic terms is ongoing. However, there may be features such as age of onset and motor skill deficits which differentiate the two conditions. Although it is frustrating to be given a diagnosis which is yet to be defined, it is worth remembering that the fundamental presentation of the two conditions is largely the same. This means that treatments, therapies, and educational approaches should also be largely similar. At the same time, all people with autism or Asperger syndrome are unique and have their own special skills and abilities. These deserve as much recognition as the areas they have difficulties in. Hope you find that helpful. When I read that, I found it certainly very helpful, and I can't believe I didn't see it for 2 years. That's it for this episode. I'm going to do another one very soon about autism because there's some other areas that I want to talk about. Very sorry for the reflections and the glasses. Yeah. So hope you've enjoyed this episode. Thank you very much, and I'll see you soon. Bye.